Hello and welcome to the AdTech Heroes podcast. In today's episode, we are going to talk about the role of the consultancy, and I'm delighted to be joined by Sam Tomlinson. Sam works at PwC as Media and Entertainment Leader for the UK. He leads PwC's multi-award-winning marketing and media assurance team. Their services cover customer insight, marketing transformation and effectiveness, media assurance, audience reporting and campaign delivery, all which is underpinned by data privacy and ethics. In 2021, Sam was recognised as one of the campaign's 40 over 40 influential figures in UK media. Hi Sam, how's it going?
Yeah, very well, thanks.
So to kick-start really, it'd be great to understand a little bit about your career and what's got you to where you are here today.
So I joined PwC 22 years ago as a graduate, trained as an accountant and auditor, always focused on media owners. Did 5 years in London, 3 years in New York. I was then unemployed and homeless for 6 months while I was travelling, which was the best part, clearly. And then 5 years ago, I could see marketing and media becoming ever more driven by tech and data. Realised there'd be an opportunity for independent, objective advice, and so set up what is now our marketing and media assurance team. So we're 60 specialists in London, and then about sort of 400 to 500 across the PwC network globally.
And in terms of your background, you said it was kind of started off on accounting. And were you always interested in media, digital, or was it kind of, how did that kind of shift happen for you anyway?
Oh, yeah, so I'm a complete media junkie, whether that's books, TV, film, radio, magazines, cinema, advertising in all its forms. So my original plan was do 3 years with PwC in the UK, qualify as an accountant, leave to join a media owner, and ultimately end up as the CFO of Channel 4 or something like that. But obviously it didn't quite happen. You get a lot of variety at PwC, and that's kept me interested.
I think the brilliant thing about our industry and all the players that are all within it, we all have different backgrounds, right? So it's not necessarily needed that you need a marketing degree or a marketing background, as long as you've got the passion for it. And there's, there could be different passions even within marketing, right? So the analytical side, the measurement side, or the branding, the client side. So there is something literally for everyone there. So it's great to see here's another person that didn't necessarily start off with a marketing background, ended up in marketing.
Yeah, well, I did. Sorry, at university, my specialism was statistics and econometrics, which then I barely used in my first 10 years at PwC. But then once you're in the marketing world, suddenly a background in stats and econometrics comes in very useful again.
It's funny you say that. That was actually my worst module. I studied economics at undergrad, and that for me that was literally the worst module that I had, just because it's very different from a lot of the other modules that I did. But that's interesting. I suppose to start with the obvious question, why have consultancies such as PwC entered the digital media world? We see I attend events, or we used to before the lockdown and the COVID pandemic period. A lot of these programmatic events or industry events, and you would have representative from the consultancies there and talking about different things. And maybe 6-7 years ago it wasn't as common, but now we're seeing a lot more of that. So I think to start off with, why have consultancies entered the digital media world?
So I think each consultancy might have a slightly different answer to this. So for our team at PwC, I think what we spotted was, as I sort of mentioned a minute ago, this growing influence of technology and data on marketing and media, and I guess that's what Sir Martin Sorrell captured as the from Mad Men to Math Men, and suddenly with that growing complexity, perhaps in an industry that historically hadn't chosen to recruit people from heavy data tech backgrounds. I could see there was going to be a need for independent, objective advice, and that's what we're experts in. So it was the rise of tech and data was the thing that appealed to our team specifically.
And in terms of clients, were the clients pushing for the consultancies to enter the realm of digital media, or was it more so yourselves being proactive and kind of going to them with solutions?
At first, it was us being
or
proactive.
A bit of both.
I mean, at first, it was us being proactive. Clients wouldn't necessarily think to ask us those questions. So that's where you have to do a lot of phone calls, emails, meetings, explaining the capabilities that you have and where you can help. For a bit of context, the 60 people in my team in London, half are classic PwC, people from a finance, governance, process control, data, tech type backgrounds. They are often the lifers, like me. The other half are the people that we've hired in who tend to be ex-media owner, ex-media agency, ex-AdTech or MarTech, ex-marketers. We've got marketing econometricians, media data scientists, and we very strongly believe the strength of the team is the synthesis of, deep industry expertise with core PwC rigor and professionalism.
So you do feel it's important to have that range of skill set within the kind of digital space, maybe the data space, analytical space, and would you say you found that sweet spot now in terms of the team that you have?
Yep, we think so. We're growing very rapidly, roughly 50% year on year. So things are going well for the team at the moment for sure.
Amazing. So what's different between what PwC offers versus the other consultancies out there? So off the top of my head, I can think of probably 2 or 3 that are already in the space and again are present and are making noise within the industry. Is there any big differences between what you guys are doing at PwC versus them?
Yeah, I think this is fascinating and is often overlooked in the trade press. So broadly within the big consultancies bucket, you've probably got Accenture, IBM, and then the big 4 audit and accounting firms. So us, KPMG, EY, and Deloitte. And often we all get bucketed together in trade press coverage, whereas actually there's some quite marked differences. If I think about Accenture, for example, and what they're doing with Accenture Interactive, Accenture's core capability, I would say, is technology implementation and business process outsourcing. That is what they are really known for. And traditionally, they've done that in the back office space with SAP or Oracle as a finance system. And then an army of people, often in Bangalore, to help process transactions. And I think part of what they're doing is applying that same model to the front office. It'll be a Salesforce implementation. And then there will be elements of that which is then outsourcing the operations of that MarTech. So Accenture Interactive is on brand for them. Clearly, then, if you want to communicate with the front office, with chief marketing officers, you need to have that creativity wrapper, which is why they acquired people like Droga5 and Karmarama. So it is on brand for them. PwC is markedly different in 2 ways. So first, we are less about tech implementation and business process outsourcing and more about independent, objective advice. So that's one key difference. The other key difference is Accenture is a public company, whereas we're a partnership. So if Accenture wants to spend a rumoured $500 million on Droga5, they are effectively placing a big bet with shareholder money. If we wanted to do that as PwC, we'd be placing that big bet with partners' own money, and you're never going to persuade partners to do that. And hence you've seen Accenture grow through acquisition and move really directly into that space of competing with traditional agency networks head on in some areas, whereas we, and to be fair, KPMG, EY, Deloitte have broadly kept clear of that. We instead have focused in on independent, objective advice, advice on tech systems, but not, we at PwC will never do media buying, for example.
So like you said, Accenture's focusing on tech, focusing on acquisitions, whereas from PwC side, it's more so a consultative, working together with the brands to find out, what the best options are. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, and working with brands and agencies ultimately to get their relationships operating as smoothly and effectively as possible. I think that's the difference. And where Accenture are going head to head with the big agencies, I think time will tell if that bet pays off. I genuinely don't know, but fascinating to watch, and it's fascinating to watch how the agencies are responding. I think we're happy to steer clear of competing directly with either of them.
I think recruitment probably plays a big part then. I can imagine Accenture hiring lots of ex-agency people if they are going directly to the brands and trying to take agency money away, right? So is that something that you've seen that is what they're doing in terms of the recruitment, and the offering is very, very similar to the agency model?
I think both sides would probably say it's slightly different. I should probably let Accenture and the agency sort of comment themselves. The point around talent is a really good one, because I think you've had a coming together of lots of different people competing for the same talent. So if you're a bright graduate who's come from a science, technology, engineering, mathematics, data science type background, 2 or 3 years experience perhaps, you have agencies who want to hire you. You have consultancies like Accenture and IBM who want to hire you. You've got AdTech and MarTech businesses that want to hire you. You've got people like PwC that want to hire you. And you've probably got startups that want to hire you, digital native startups that want to hire you. So you've suddenly got a lot of people competing for the same talent. And you see that with wage rates being bid up very quickly. And one of the challenges that we all face, whether you're an agency network or Accenture or PwC, is we're all used to quite rigid pay structures, which often can't respond as quickly as we would like to, particularly hot recruitment markets.
And how do you attract these? And that's just the thought I had now. How are you attracting kind of creative talent or talent that might want to go kind of agency side historically? How do you attract them to PwC? Because for a lot of these candidates, PwC will in their mind be very corporate, very different to the kind of media world and the digital world. So is that quite difficult on your side as well to kind of attract that talent?
One of the things that I've noticed, and I was noticing this pre-COVID, and it's even more marked now, is whether you walk into a PwC or an agency or a media owner, everybody pretty much looks the same now, and the office space looks the same, and people are dressed the same. I think there's been a sort of coming, that sense that an environment is corporate is probably less of a distinguishing factor now, I would say. So we would say
you've got your table tennis tables and your pool tables and the free food and all that.
So we haven't quite got our table tennis tables yet, but you certainly get the sense that there's everybody's wearing jeans, either shirt or t-shirt or zip top, trainers. Those environments look a lot more similar than they used to. In terms of how we would attract, so we would say we offer people variety, fundamentally, the chance to work with lots of different clients. I think that's really important. So we would offer variety. We offer structured career progression. And we offer the chance to work internationally in pretty much any country in the world. We've got offices in 160 different countries. Clearly, that ability to work internationally was less attractive for the last 2 years. Nobody wants to go on secondment to be in isolation. But as the world starts to emerge, I think our ability to offer international experience will be another key factor.
Interesting. And why do brands like working with you? And it'd be great to get some examples of how you are working with brands.
So we would say that it's that synthesis of understanding the marketing and media world coupled with PwC rigor and professionalism. We can work with brands on customer insight, so helping them build out their single customer view and their first-party customer data. Clearly, that's going to become ever more critical as third-party data dries up. We can work with brands on marketing effectiveness using econometrics, understanding and optimizing that return on investment. We work with brands helping them manage their media spend, whether that's through media agency pitch processes or negotiations or governing that media spend on an ongoing basis. And we sort of bracket all of that ultimately under a marketing transformation umbrella. I'm not usually allowed to name clients publicly, so I'm going to have to talk in sort of general terms, but
even verticals, specific.
We work across sectors, that's helpful. So the sectors that tend to be the big advertising sectors are the ones that my team focuses in on. So that's retail, consumer, telco, automotive, financial services. For PwC more broadly, we also do a lot of work with B2B marketing teams. That's not my team, but other parts of PwC. And PwC has to be pretty good at B2B marketing because we have to do a lot of that ourselves too.
And do you recommend media owners to clients, to agencies? Are you kind of basing everything back to data and measurement? Kind of how are you making those conclusions of who to work with and the recommendations that you're making?
So when it comes to, we would not get involved in a media plan. Like a media agency can produce a much better, more granular media plan than we ever would. Even the people on our team who are ex-planners and buyers would say that. So we wouldn't be recommending media owners. What we would be doing is saying these media owners have really strong first-party audience data. These media owners have had that audience data verified. These media owners have a premium contextual environment that would naturally sit with your brand. So we have a lot of those sorts of observations. These media owners have had their campaign delivery and reporting verified. We're looking to build trust and insight in those ways, but we wouldn't be doing we would not be constructing a media plan. Media agencies are much better at that than us.
I suppose that's where there is no conflict of interest, right? And that's why you are working with the agencies and not only with clients directly as well.
Yeah, 100%. We took a very sort of firm decision that we would never get involved in media planning and buying. Partly because we think the agencies will always do that better than us, and partly because it would just present too many conflicts of interest. So, yeah, media planning and buying definitely not for us.
Okay. And have you had any pushbacks, and how has the industry welcomed consultancies in general? Like you said, you might have been bucketed with the other consultancies, so it's probably unfair on PwC. Like we just said now, you work with agencies, you work with brands, you're not working on kind of media planning. But how's the generally, how's the industry welcomed consultancies, in your opinion?
So I would say welcoming. Certainly for us and our team, I feel like we've got good relationships with brands, with agencies, with tech vendors and with publishers. And we think it's important to maintain all of that. And part of that is being seen to be like rigorously fair in everything that you do and say. And I think so long as people might not always agree with you, but so long as you've been consistent and fair and reasonable and independent and objective, then I think people are generally welcoming. Perhaps one of the headaches that you face somewhere like PwC is we're such a big organisation. I am one of 1,000 partners in the UK alone, and so you can't always know what someone else is going to say somewhere within PwC. So that can present some challenges. About a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, PwC put out a study that said X% of all professional jobs were going to be replaced by robots. I then have clients coming to me and saying, "What do you mean my career and my business is going to be replaced by robots?" So managing multiple messages from different parts of our firm is an interesting challenge.
Definitely. And do you have any examples of where you have given kind of better insights or results to a brand versus maybe what they were expecting from other players within the industry?
Yeah, I think we could talk about the study that we did in 2020 into programmatic supply chains. So ISBA, as the UK advertiser trade body, had been, had a clear message from its members that its members, wanted a greater understanding of programmatic supply chains. And I'm using programmatic here to mean effectively digital advertising that is outside the walled gardens. So that could be OMP, open marketplace, it could be PMP, private marketplace. And so we did a very big piece of work working with ISBA and its members and the AOP and its publisher members, gathering programmatic data from the buy side and the sell side and matching those impressions up. The results were pretty well publicized. Poor data quality meant only 12% of impressions could be matched end to end, and 15% of spend was disappearing into this sort of unknown delta, primarily again due to data quality issues, we believe. Nobody else had ever succeeded in joining up those supply chains end to end. Like nobody else. Previous waterfall studies had gone from the demand side, stopped at the DSP, and effectively guesstimated the rest of the chain. So I think that's an example of where you bring together the three different sets of skills in one place. You've got the financial accounting auditing skills, you've got the data science skills, and you've got the understanding of the programmatic and AdTech world. And we would argue that combination of skills is quite unique.
And was that a large combination of qualitative and quantitative data? Was there a lot of anecdotal information that you were getting, or was that purely based on numbers?
Virtually
like
all
in general.
Yeah. So virtually all quantitative, with one or two exceptions. So just to bring that together, so it was a quantitative study. It was data gathered and analysed. There's places where you had to make assumptions. So one example, some of the advertisers in the study were using a verification tool where the cost was a CPM. That's easy to build into a waterfall. You've got a CPM cost. Some of the advertisers, for example, might have a flat rate with a verification tool globally. You've got to try and figure out what proportion of that would you allocate to the UK, what proportion of that would be on a per impression basis, so you can get a comparable data figure. So there are some assumptions within there, still quantitative, I guess, but assumptions. The qualitative bit came through in where we were having to infer explanations. So that was qualitative. That was often based on public and off-record conversations with people across the industry, and then ultimately our recommendations informed by the data, but inevitably have some opinion in there too.
I'm guessing you had a lot of people contact you, and organisations and clients and agencies off the back of it. Did you get a lot of feedback after it was released?
Yeah, a reaction was huge. I mean, quite overwhelming, to be honest. I think ISBA and I ended up
remember seeing it all over the trade press, all the different numbers, kind of talking, a lot of the industry events. There were big topics talking about the report. It seems like, you did cause a lot of noise off the back of it.
Hopefully in a positive way for the industry. So we ended up presenting it. It was like 90-something times by the end we presented the study results and findings. We got 16 industry awards globally. Very, very proud of that. The ANA picked up on it and is now running an equivalent study in the US. That's important. ISBA and we are doing a relatively sort of small update to the study later this year to understand the extent to which supply chains have improved since the first study. So, huge reaction in that sense. Interestingly, the parts that didn't get picked up as much as they should have done, I think, are two areas. The trade press understandably focused in on the delta. But the delta really, for me, is a secondary issue. The real challenge is around the data access and the data quality. It took us more than 9 months to get the data, and the quality of the data was variable and often poor in terms of missing data fields, inconsistent or undefined data sets, retention policies that varied everywhere in terms of what was retained and how long for. And you can only ever understand and investigate and drive down the delta if you fix the data access and the data quality. And I'm not sure that got picked up as much in the trade press as it should have done, because the delta is a more interesting headline than the basics of data access, data quality. The second thing that didn't get picked up as much as it could have done was some of the advertisers in our study were spending up to 25% of their programmatic budget on third-party data. And if you fast forward to a world where much of that third-party data drives up with the end of third-party cookies, that's going to mean a sea change for some brands in how they deliver targeted marketing messages, but perhaps wasn't focused on as much as it could have been when the first report came out.
Yeah, that's interesting. And we've seen that on our side. Seedtag have anyway, in terms of we're getting a lot more inbound requests because we're a completely contextual cookieless platform. And we're getting a lot more of interest now. We're talking about the death of the cookie and how brands can work with us. So definitely, I think that's an important number. You just said that 25% was of activity was based on third-party data, which is going to just all dry up, right? If it hasn't already. So yeah, that's definitely an interesting point. In terms of the results from. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, just on that, I should just to reiterate the 25% was for some advertisers. That wasn't the average across the study. So some weren't spending anything on third-party data, but there were some that were spending up to a quarter of their budget. And your point around contextual targeting, I think when we look ahead to the end of third-party cookies, and I know everyone focuses on the Google discontinuing them in the Chrome browser, but obviously there's a lot of browsers that have already discontinued cookies or made it easy for people to switch them off. So the cookieless world in many ways is already here. We think this ultimately is a good thing for premium publishers. The winners from this world should be premium publishers with a strong contextual high quality environment. They're the same publishers that can get consent from their audiences because they're trusted. They're the ones who can build out that audience first-party data. And a world in which spend is rebalanced towards premium publishers is something that we think is sort of fundamentally good for the industry and probably good for society at large.
And it's stripping it back to basics, really, isn't it? Because it's contextual advertising isn't anything new. It's been around for many, many years, even across print, across TV, and other mediums. So it's, I think, just bring things back to basics, and having a relevant ad shown to you or a brand shown to you in that when you're in that right mindset, reading and consuming different types of content, whether it's like I said, through reading or visually or whatever it might be.
Yeah, absolutely. Right audience, right context, right time.
And then within, again, just touching on the report again that you released, have you seen many organizations using that data to then change and adapt their strategy? Before you answer that, I've seen it on my side. I've always worked media owner side. And those conversations were happening a lot more. So they said, did you see the report? We want to do a kind of small audit of our own and have a look at, how can we access your inventory? And even now when we are filling out RFIs or working with agencies, they do ask those types of questions, which they might not have done 7-8 years ago in the programmatic space. Like, how can I access your inventory? What are the different routes to access? Is your inventory available in this way or that way? And there's a lot of questions within those forms to fill out. So have you seen that type of feedback a lot? And have there been specific organizations have done it more than others, like agencies or brands?
That is a great question. So broadly, we think that there's been sort of 4 groups of responses to the study. Sadly, there is, and this is the largest group, there's a largest group of advertisers who simply have done nothing. Too difficult to deal with, not going to think about it. Let's focus on something else. We would argue not a good response if, in all probability, 15% of your programmatic budget is, unaccounted for. But sadly, quite a big bucket. Then you've got the more interesting responses. So some of the agencies have developed well-curated, fully auditable private marketplaces. We've done audits of some of them. Really interesting. In the match rate end-to-end of the impressions, well up, so that you can match the majority of impressions, not 12%. The unknown delta, right down, low single digits, and ultimately more money reaching the publisher, which is a good thing. So some really interesting responses there by agencies. And then also some individual brands have struck direct SSP relationships. So Nestle have talked about this quite publicly. And then what that means is that the SSPs, they get a certain percentage of spend, either percentage or volume of spend committed by the advertiser. And in return, they agree to go and get the permission from their publishers to share log level data with someone like us, so that you, again, then you can stitch the impressions together and understand what's happening end to end. So that's it. Broadly, you've got do nothing, agency PMPs, individual brand SSP relationships. And then finally, fourth, you've got the trade body response. So is BAR working with IAB, IPA, AOP in the UK? You've got the ANA response in the US. And trade bodies, obviously it takes time because you've got to work on consensus, but a trade body response to these types of issues does feel to me like the way that you would ultimately benefit all advertisers.
Just touching on your point that you just mentioned now, more kind of like marketplace deals, and we've seen that, as I've seen that over the last kind of year or so, a lot more of these happening. Xandr have their Curate product. I know Smart have a similar product in their SSP. The Rubicon or Magnite have had their storefront product for many years now. So there are those kind of direct PMP deals that you can set up with publishers. But we're still seeing a lot of spend run open in the open market. And do you think that will slowly diminish, or do you think there will always be a role for the open market within our industry?
I think there will always be a role for open marketplace, but I think it will diminish, particularly for the types of advertisers that we work with. So, at PwC, we're typically working with bigger, more sophisticated advertisers. I think they will gradually shift spend towards private marketplace, because a private marketplace makes it easier to mitigate risks around fraud, viewability, brand safety, and spend leakage. And that, especially as third-party data becomes much less prevalent, I think you'll see a natural coalescing around PMPs. I think for brands that are less concerned about those issues and that are running a direct response campaign, I can see why they might choose to continue to use OMP. So I don't think OMP is dead in any sense, but I think PMPs will become more prevalent.
And then I remember you just now mentioned, in terms of off the back of the report, there were a lot of brands that simply did nothing. And do you think they did nothing because they simply didn't know that they should do something, or they knew they could do something? So then I suppose my question is, does there need to be more programmatic or technical expertise or AdTech expertise in-house? We know the topic of in-housing's been around for a long time now, and I don't think it's going away. But are we, like you said, off the back of the report, there were just simply some brands that weren't doing nothing. And is there then a correlation between the kind of expertise that they have in-house versus other brands that, have those ad tech leaders or heads of programmatic within their team, not the agency, but within their in-house team? And did they make more of an effort in doing something off the back of the report?
Yeah, good questions. I'm going to tackle in-housing first, and then what that might mean for working with people like us. So within a UK and European context, we think in-housing for most sort of big advertisers is likely to mean owning your own tech contracts. So for sure, whether that's a DSP or an ad server or a verification tool contract, there's some good arguments for owning that directly yourself. Not least because as you start to switch from third to first party data, that means that first party data is then remaining within an ecosystem that you, or a tech stack that you control, and that will be often easier than passing that first party data to an agency to activate, which no matter what reassurances can be offered, your own in-house legal people might get concerned. So owning tech contracts, we think, is a trend likely to accelerate. When it comes to in-housing personnel, again, in a UK and a European context, I think we've seen search in-housed well sometimes. Social meaning Meta, I guess the whole point of the Meta platform is anyone can use it, so that must be in-houseable. Like full programmatic though, we've not seen many examples of brands do that successfully. The challenges of attracting and retaining programmatic talent is hard, because those people often want to be in a sort of fast-moving, dynamic environment with lots of clients where they can learn from each other, and where they have a career progression that they can see for themselves, which is harder if they are one person in a three-person in-house programmatic team. I think it's a bit different in the US. In the US, you've got just a bigger marketplace of both spend and programmatic talent. So I can see how in-housing might be an easier, not easier because it's not easy, but I can see how in-housing might have taken off in the US in a way that is much harder for us in UK and Europe. So in general, we would say when it comes to campaign planning and execution, let your agencies do it. That's what they're really, really good at. So, whether they're operating their tech or your tech, let them do it. When it comes to sort of how might you investigate supply chains, etc., what we do think is a really good idea is to make sure you have a central team within your brand that does really understand the media world. So that might mean it might mean as little as one TV person, one digital person. Horrible generalizations there. You know what I mean? If you've got one or two people who are ex-agency or ex-media owner who understand this space, they can then draw on advisors and consultancies to help make progress. So have some expertise, but leave the campaign execution to agencies.
Makes sense. We've touched on programmatic a little bit, but what part does programmatic play within the consultancies in terms of the advice that you're giving, in terms of the measurement on your side and the team that you're recruiting? Is everything with programmatic in mind, I'm assuming?
Well, we cover all types of media, both offline and online. So, we're there to advise whether it's TV, out of home, radio, sponsorships, cinema, or all the different types of digital spend. So we would cover everything. Specifically within programmatic, questions that we get, we would get questions, as I've just talked about, cost benefit of in-housing and what might be included within that. We get questions around how to build out and activate first-party data. And then we get questions around supply chain transparency, which we've just talked about. And then we get questions around the quality of campaign execution. And we can answer all of those types of questions. The question that we never answer is my spend? I want to know if my digital spend is at market value. And when I say we never answer, I mean we give a really straightforward answer, which is virtually all digital media is biddable. That means it's been an auction. That means you've paid market price. If you want to be really precise, the way you win an auction is you pay more than anyone else. The winner's curse in economics. So I can tell any marketing procurement function anywhere in the world, you are paying above market value for all your digital advertising, which is the sort of thing that sends procurement into a tailspin. And then you have to point out that it's both true and not relevant. The really relevant question is about the value of the impression. Did you want to win that one? Was it the right audience in the right context at the right time? That's the question that people need to answer. So trying to benchmark the price of digital media, waste of time. Trying to understand the value of digital media, that is a good, worthwhile use of time.
It's a really good point. I think we're never talking about the value of the media. It's always, can we get the CPM down? Can we lower it? Can we package it up? Can we give rebates or added value or whatever it might be? And it's always about the cost. But yeah, no one's questioning the cost of the value of the media provided by the different options that are out there. So yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. So we've got one final question. If you had a superpower in AdTech, what would it be?
So the obvious answer for me to give would be, like Superman has X-ray vision. That's what I'd like, to be able to see through supply chains. But I think we're getting quite close to that anyway now. So I think the superpower I would like to see within digital advertising is that ability to distinguish the truly valuable parts of digital advertising. So a view that all our team share is that there's been too much of an emphasis on audience targeting over the last 10 to 15 years, and insufficient attention paid to the contextual environment in which that ad appears. So we are very strongly supportive of premium publisher environments. If I had a superpower, I would like it to be the market as a whole starting to move in that direction, and potentially the end of third-party cookies might be the impetus for that.
Amazing, great answer. That's all we've got time for in today's episode. Thank you, Sam, for your time.
Thank you.